Mabel Whitaker used to be someone, not famous, not rich, but known at least within her small corner of town. She was the woman who never forgot your birthday at the library, who had a perfectly folded handkerchief tucked in her sleeve, who always smelled faintly of peppermint and lilac. She was Harold's wife. She was Ellie's Graham. She was the type of person people trusted without thinking about it. And then, almost without warning, the world got quiet. The house felt too big after Harold died, but not in square footage, in feeling. The rooms felt hollow. The air echoed. His recliner, untouched, remained angled toward the television like he just stepped out to check the mail. But he hadn't, and he wasn't coming back. People were kind at first. Her daughter Lynn called every day. The church ladies brought soup and hugs. Her neighbor Janine stopped by with warm bread that Mabel barely tasted. But kindness fades. People go back to their routines. And Mabel? She didn't go back to anything. She woke up. She fed the cat. She stared at the tea kettle until it whistled. And she forgot why she'd walked into rooms at least 5 times a day. She wasn't depressed, she told herself. She just didn't feel much of anything. One Saturday morning, Mabel shuffled into the kitchen and turned on the radio out of habit. A cheery voice declared it was going to be a gorgeous autumn weekend and urged listeners to get out there and live. She rolled her eyes. Live. As if that were as easy as opening the curtains. She poured a cup of tea, sat down at the kitchen table, and then, without meaning to, let her hand slip just a little too far. The cup tipped. Porcelain shattered on the floor. Hot liquid spilled across her slippers. And Mabel just sat there, staring at the mess, not crying and not moving, just staring, until she whispered, "I don't know what to do with this life anymore." Later that afternoon, while cleaning up the pieces, she found something wedged behind the bread box, a folded piece of yellowed paper. It was a grocery list in Harold's handwriting, but it wasn't the contents that stopped her. Eggs, tomatoes, pickles. It was the note scribbled at the bottom. "Don't forget, Mabel likes the honey yogurt." Her breath caught. He always remembered, even when she didn't. And here she was, forgetting herself. That night, she opened a notebook she used years ago to plan a family reunion and wrote 6 simple words. Try 5 small things, see what happens. Not goals, not resolutions, just a nudge, a whisper to herself. Just try. The next morning, she started small. She opened the dictionary from Harold's old crossword drawer and chose a word at random. Solace. She chuckled. Really, Harold? She looked it up anyway. A place or thing that gives comfort during sorrow or trouble. By noon, she'd scribbled the word in her notebook, drew a flower next to it, thought about the smell of Harold's aftershave, the way it lingered on his sweater. That afternoon, she found a pressed 4-leaf clover in an old cookbook. She had no memory of placing it there. It made her smile. The next day, the word was halcyon. She read about calm seas, old legends, and the bird that birthed serenity. That led her down a rabbit hole. Greece, mythology, migratory patterns. She ended the day sketching a bird with open wings in her notebook. The habit stuck. Every morning, one word, one thought, one discovery. Soon, her kitchen wall filled with sticky notes. New words, tiny definitions, little doodles. Sonder, heareth, susurrus. The world didn't feel quite so dull anymore, because now it had language again. 2 weeks in, Mabel walked to the mailbox expecting nothing but coupons and bills. Among the usual stack, there was a thin envelope from the town library. Inside, a small handwritten card. We're restarting the Word of the Week group. Thought you might like to join us again. You always brought the best ones. Carla. Mabel pressed the card to her chest and stood there for several minutes. She didn't join. Not yet, but she smiled. Someone had remembered her. Her second habit wasn't planned. One morning, the power went out. No radio, no distractions. So she walked. She didn't go far, just to the park near the old train tracks. But she walked slowly. For the first time in a long time, she paid attention. She noticed the way the breeze combed through the grass, the metallic scent of the air after last night's rain, the sound of her own breath. She passed a boy walking a shaggy dog. The dog barked once, then sat perfectly still and stared at her. She stared back, then smiled. From that day on, she walked every morning, not for fitness, but for sight. She created mini-games: find 5 red things, listen for 3 new sounds, make up a story for each person who passes. She began recognizing faces: the jogger with the purple shoes, the woman with the sunflower hat, the elderly man who always carried a notebook but never stopped writing. One morning she took a detour, a path behind the park she never noticed before. It led to a tiny overlook, nothing dramatic, just a stone bench and a patch of wildflowers. But it became hers, her secret place. Wednesday evening arrived like it always did, soft, slow, uninvited. But this time Mabel met it with intention. She brewed chamomile tea, placed it beside a lavender candle, and opened her notebook to a fresh page. At the top she wrote, "The 5 questions, week 1. She didn't know why these particular 5 questions came to her. They just did. What made me smile this week? What surprised me? What felt hard? But I did it anyway. When did I feel closest to someone or to myself? What's one thing I can give tomorrow?" She paused, letting silence fill the space, then began writing. Smiled when the dog barked and sat like a statue. Also, when I found Harold's old mustard jar labeled, "Do not throw magic inside." Surprised that I remembered how to sketch a bird, and that I didn't feel as heavy today. Hard, but did it. I ate lunch at the table instead of in bed. Felt close to Ellie. Her text said, "Love you, miss you." I hadn't even known I needed to hear it. "Give it, I'll bake banana bread for Janine tomorrow." She looked tired today. She stared at the page, almost startled by how much she'd said, how much had been waiting to be heard. And then Mabel laughed, a short, shaky thing, but real. "Turns out," she said aloud to no one, "I'm still here." The next week, instead of just answering the questions, she added something new. A letter to herself at 40. "Dear Mabel, I wish I'd told you back then that it was okay to rest, that you didn't have to prove anything to anyone, that your kids would love you even if the kitchen wasn't spotless, and that one day you'd miss even the noise." The following week, she wrote to herself at 22, then 58, then 71. Sometimes the letters were forgiving, sometimes they were confrontational, but they were always honest. And slowly, page by page, she began to recover pieces of herself she didn't know were missing. Sundays became sacred again. At 5:02 p.m. sharp, Ellie called. "Hi, Graham." At first, their conversations were light. College drama, the weather, recipes. Then one Sunday, Ellie asked, "Graham, did you ever fall out of love?" Mabel blinked, caught off guard. She didn't answer right away. Then softly, "Yes, once, with Harold." Ellie was silent. "It was after our 3rd anniversary. We were broke, tired, and I thought, maybe I'd made a mistake." "What happened?" "I told him, through tears and snot and everything." "What did he say?" "He sat with me, didn't try to fix it, just sat and said, 'Let's try again tomorrow.'" Ellie exhaled into the phone. Wow. The calls grew deeper. Each week they shared a story. Ellie's first heartbreak, Mabel's first job at the drugstore, Ellie's fear of graduating, Mabel's fear of being forgotten. They started recording their calls. Mabel had the idea to make them into a memory library for Ellie's future children. "Not that I'm in a rush," Mabel teased. Ellie laughed. "I'm just trying to pass Spanish right now." One rainy weekend, Ellie showed up unannounced. Mabel nearly dropped her tea. "I missed your face," Ellie said. They spent 3 days doing nothing and everything. They made soup, baked cookies, played Scrabble, watched old slides from a projector in the attic. On the last night, Ellie said, "I didn't know I needed this, but I did." Mabel smiled. "Me too." Mabel had always eaten quickly. She was a mother, a wife, a woman who served others first. But now she had time, and she gave it back to herself. One slow, intentional meal per day. Real plate, cloth napkin, candlelight. No screens, no books, No background noise, just her and the meal. The first time she made a grilled cheese sandwich. Nothing fancy, but the crunch, the pull of cheese, the buttery crispness. It made her close her eyes. I forgot it could taste like this. Another evening, she made Harold's birthday dinner. Meatloaf, green beans, and lemon meringue pie. She set a second plate, talked to the chair, told him about Ellie's visit, her sketching, her secret path behind the park. She didn't cry, she just smiled, because for the first time since he left, it didn't feel like he was missing. It felt like he was there. It began with a phrase she wrote down randomly. Stillness is not emptiness, it's the breath before music. She stared at the sentence, then wrote another, and another. Soon she had a page full of lines that didn't quite rhyme, but made her chest feel warm. She began writing poetry, quiet, short verses, taped them around the house, on the mirror, the fridge, the window by her bed. A favorite. I used to chase the loud. Now I sit beside the quiet and call it home. She never showed anyone, not even Ellie. It was hers, just hers. On her 74th birthday, Mabel hosted her daughter Lynn and Ellie. She set the table with real linen, used her mother's china, cooked slow-roasted chicken, sweet potatoes, and cinnamon apples. They laughed, took silly photos, told the same stories they'd told a dozen times before, and they still made them laugh. At the end, she brought out her notebook. She handed it to Ellie. For you, someday, when you need it. Ellie blinked back tears. I already need it. Late that night, Mabel wrote a note and taped it to the fridge. To whoever needs this, try 5 small things, 1 word each morning, 1 walk where you listen, 1 night of questions, 1 story with someone you love, 1 meal that reminds you you're alive. And if something else calls to you, follow it. You don't need to fix your life. Just be in it, quietly, softly, fully. She didn't find her way back through a grand adventure. She found it through a dictionary, a walk, a phone call, a sandwich, a question. She found her way back by simply beginning again. And so can you. Start today. Start like Mabel. Because the smallest habits often leave the loudest echoes. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if this story touched your heart. You never know whose life you might change by sharing it.